Good afternoon, my friends. How are you guys? Hey, it's October, a great month. The Senior Center is bringing an event that's backed by popular demand, advanced planning. For those of you that were here last year, you remember Parini and Mary, who came from UW Hospital and Clinics and gave us an amazing presentation. They're back today to educate us a little bit more. So how about giving them one of those wonderful Fitchburg welcomes? There you go, Parini.
Thank you. Thank you for the warm welcome and for welcoming us back. We had such a good time here last year, and what a great turnout today. My name is Parini. I'm one of the Advanced Care Planning Coordinators for UW Health.
And I'm Mary. I'm the other Advanced Care Planning Program Coordinator for UW Health. So Parini and I work together. We a lot of times go into the community to talk about advanced care planning. It is totally okay if you get your care someplace other than UW Health. What we're going to talk about today is really good information for anyone, regardless of where you get your care. So just know that hopefully today you'll learn something new. You can take it back, share with your friends or family.
So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start off with a video, and then we're going to kind of get into what is advanced care planning and why does it matter? Why are we here talking about this? We'll start off with a little video first.
There are no guarantees. None of us know when we might get in an accident, when we might get really sick.
Who knows what tomorrow brings? And at least just start, at least just have the initial conversation.
I remember sitting in the basement of the hospital with my parents and screaming like a crazy person because it was very emotional and very stressful, saying, I don't know what he wants. I have no idea.
What if we hadn't done this, and what if we hadn't done that? What if we had waited another 24 hours? And I think by having your advance directive and giving direction, you're taking, hopefully, that guilt away from them.
It could come up when you're at dinner. It can come up when you're watching a movie. At any time.
It's a great opportunity to get to know each other better.
We may sometimes say, are you serious? Is that really what you mean? And they'll explain, yes, that's really what I want.
If something happens to me, I want the doctors to do everything possible.
My family knows that I don't want any heroic measures to be taken.
I don't like pain that much. So I would say as much pain medication as possible.
I would not want to be a burden on the family.
I would like to be comfortable, kept comfortable, and alert as possible in order to be with my family during those last times.
I would like to have my choir, come around and sing the songs we usually sing together.
It flows so much easier when the final wishes are documented, they're in place, and the family is essentially with one accord or on the same sheet of music.
Welcome the opportunity to have the conversation.
Have that conversation.
Have a conversation just as a family.
I would encourage families to have the conversation.
We talk all the time about being close and about being loving, but what does it actually mean? When we say, I plan to put my life in your hands, there's seriously nothing sweeter to do.
When we say advanced care planning, what exactly does that mean? So that's planning ahead for a future event. So maybe something unexpected happens like a car accident, or maybe it's an advancing dementia such that it leaves us unable to make our own healthcare decisions. And now someone else has to make those decisions for us. It's a way for us to let those around us learn about our values, our preferences, our goals for what a good quality of life means to us in case someone has to make a decision for us. So wishes are going to be documented in an advance directive. Now, that can mean a number of things. You may hear someone say, I have an advance directive. That can mean a number of different types of documents. Today, we're going to focus specifically on the power of attorney for healthcare. But sometimes when people say advance directive, they could also mean they have a living will or they have a do not resuscitate order. What we tell people is if you're only going to do one document, if you're only going to commit to doing one thing, it's do that power of attorney for healthcare. You want to do that document while you are considered of sound mind. It's a legal document, so we want to make sure you understand it. You want to do this before the crisis hits. So why is this so important? Advanced care planning helps to ensure that you're communicating your wishes to your loved ones. It's going to help them with any potential stress and conflict that might happen. Mary and I both used to be social workers in an intensive care unit, and we would have patients who never really told their loved ones what they did or didn't want, and we would see families in such agony over whether or not they made the right decision. Maybe they're not getting along. Maybe there's tension between different family members thinking, you know, mom would have wanted this. No, mom would have wanted that. So really getting your wishes documented can help ease that burden for your loved ones. And then what we're going to talk about in a little bit, and it's probably going to be one of your biggest takeaways today, that in Wisconsin, when you complete a power of attorney for healthcare, your healthcare agent, that's the person you're going to choose to be your decision maker, is going to have legal authority to be your healthcare decision maker. And we're going to talk more about what that means.
Okay, so before we talk more about the healthcare power of attorney, we're just going to take a second to talk about the power of attorney for finances and property. So this isn't a form that Parini and I help with because it's not related to healthcare, but people often say, hey, I know you're talking about a healthcare power of attorney. What if I want to have a power of attorney for my finances or property? There is a form for that too. It's a free form. It's a legal document. It allows you to name a person if you couldn't make your own decisions regarding your finance or your property management. It allows you to name a person you would trust to manage that. One thing to note is that it usually takes effect right away. So you sign it and that other person can help you right away unless you otherwise specify on the form. So sometimes people say, I really don't want help with my finances or property until I can't do it myself. And if that's what you'd like, you can choose to write that in. One good thing to know is sometimes Parini and I work with people when they're in the hospital and maybe they still need to pay their rent or their mortgage or manage their credit card statements. And if you don't have someone authorized to help you do those things, families can kind of get in a tight spot of like, oh, I really want to be able to help my mom pay her bills, but I can't access her finances to do it. So this would be a form that you could name a person that you trust to help you do that. We strongly recommend that you sign the document in front of a notary. Other times people have really complicated finances. Maybe they have a trust or a lot of property, other things like that. If that's the case, you might want to consult with an estate attorney if you have kind of a more complex financial or property case. And there are free forms for this. On the state website online if anyone needs that. When you leave today, you're going to be able to get a folder which has a copy of the presentation and it'll include that information. And again, this isn't one that we help with at UW Health, but we want to make sure that you're aware of it because when we talk more about the healthcare power of attorney, that has nothing to do with finances, knowing that this is a separate form. Okay, so let's talk about power of attorney for healthcare. So what is that document? So what it is, it's a written legal document. It's free. You can get it from the state of Wisconsin. You can get it from your healthcare provider. You can get it from us. Sometimes people work with an attorney, but you don't have to. It allows you to name up to 3 people that you trust to make decisions for you if you ever couldn't make your own decisions. And what it also does is it gives you the option if you have some specific wishes that you want for your health care. Maybe it's you would or wouldn't want dialysis or a certain type of treatment. You can make that known on your form too, and we'll talk about that in a bit.
Okay, so earlier I mentioned that in Wisconsin, by creating a power of attorney for healthcare, you've established a legal healthcare decision maker. I said that should be your takeaway for today. So let's talk a little bit about that. In the state of Wisconsin, we are not a next of kin state. So what that means is, say you're married, your spouse is not automatically your legal decision maker. So they don't automatically have the right to make your healthcare decisions. Or like Mary said earlier with finances, the only way to ensure anyone has legal authority over your decision making is to create that power of attorney for healthcare. So if in Wisconsin, it happens all the time. People end up in the hospital, they never completed this power of attorney for healthcare, and we do need to go to someone for decision making. In those cases, most healthcare facilities have sort of a next of kin plan. So you show up in the hospital, something happened, you can't make a decision, you never completed a power of attorney. Who are we going to go to? So we may look, are you married? Do you have adult children? Do you have siblings? We kind of go down this list to figure out who your decision maker is. But that really only applies in that hospital clinic type setting that we can rely on your next of kin. I'm going to share an example shortly that goes into this a little bit more. Where this really comes into play is if you do not create a power of attorney for healthcare and something happens and you get admitted into a care facility, you need to be admitted into a care facility. You do not have anyone that legally has the authority to do so. And what that means now is your loved ones will have to go to court to become your legal guardian. So it can be really complicated and expensive, and I'm going to give you an example of this to kind of hone in on the point. Okay, this is not a real patient, but very similar to any patient at UW Health really at any given time. So I'm going to talk about Jamie. Unfortunately, Jamie suffered a major stroke and now has extensive care needs, including the need for extensive rehabilitation. So Jamie was in the intensive care unit for several weeks and now is ready to transfer to the rehabilitation unit. Unfortunately, Jamie never completed a power of attorney for healthcare and does not have decision-making capacity, meaning Jamie has been unable to make decisions. So what this means now is although Jamie's spouse has been making care decisions for Jamie while they've been in the hospital, that spouse does not have the legal authority to admit Jamie into a care facility. So the care facility says, hey, we're willing to take you, but not until you have a legal decision maker appointed. So now Jamie's spouse will have to go to court to become the legal guardian. So it's a legal process that has to take place. Even though we've allowed Jamie's spouse to make all these decisions in the hospital, they still have to go to court to make any decisions outside of the hospital, like admitting Jamie into the care facility. So what that means, Jamie's gonna sit in the hospital. He needs rehab. He had a devastating stroke. He needs to go to rehab. But this court process can take weeks, sometimes months, depending on the situation. And Jamie now is left sitting in a hospital bed, missing out on days that he should be at rehabilitation. It's also expensive. Attorneys can be several $1,000s, sometimes anywhere between $2,000 and $5,000 to do this guardianship petition, when a power of attorney for healthcare is free. So had Jamie completed that document before the stroke, we could have avoided all of this. And then it's just stressful. You know, Jamie's wife is already dealing with some pretty serious health issues, and now we're saying, hey, I know you're doing good, you're making great decisions, but it's not good enough in Wisconsin. You have to go to court to have the legal authority. Super stressful. Now, once the guardianship petition gets filed, Jamie can then transfer to the rehabilitation unit. Does anyone have any questions about this? Yes?
So is that the way it's written?
Great question. So the question is that the way the law was written? That in the hospital we can go to next of kin, but outside of the hospital we can't? And actually, the answer is there is no law. So the Wisconsin statutes are really silent on this issue. So in the hospital, technically you're still not a legal decision maker, but we have to have someone to give consent. So hospitals have been able to, we call it an informed consent policy. Every healthcare facility is going to have something like that, where we can kind of go down this hierarchy of who can make healthcare decisions. But technically, that person does not have any legal authority. Does that answer your question? Okay, great. Any others? So the question is, if you were not married, no siblings, parents, grandparents deceased, and you didn't complete a power of attorney for healthcare, what would happen in that situation? Say you were hospitalized, couldn't make a decision. So we would really look to see who, who any other family members, if there are cousins, aunts, uncles, we try to do a little detective work to see, is there any other family member in the picture? Or we look to see, are there close friends? Is there anyone in your life that is a trusted person that knows you, that could probably be a good voice for you? So even if it's not family, we can kind of go down this list. We can look to neighbors, friends. Maybe you have some emergency contacts listed with your primary care provider. We would call those people. We do have cases where we have people who really don't have anyone. And in those cases, we may have to go down this guardianship route to find a court-appointed guardian. Yeah, I'm so sorry about your spouse. The question really is, you've completed a power of attorney for healthcare, but sadly your spouse recently passed away, and you're wondering if you need to go back and look at this document or update this document. And the answer is it depends. If that is true, in fact, that you picked maybe a second choice and a third choice, what happens is if your first agent passes away or is unable to serve in that role, we will automatically go to your second choice or go on to the third choice, so on and so forth. So it's quite possible that your document is great as is and nothing needs to change. I would encourage you to kind of pull that out, take a look at it, and make sure that you do have backup choices listed. If you don't, then yes, I would encourage you to update that document when you have time. And to make sure it reflects your current wishes. Kind of as a side note, advanced care planning is not a one-time discussion. It's really a process because our wishes change over time, our health changes over time. What we want today may not be what we want 20 years from now. So every now and then it's good to take a look at this and make sure it still reflects what you want. Great questions.
I would just add to, I think you mentioned that your child lives out of state. So Wisconsin is pretty unique in our laws that we're not a next of kin law, that we don't have that assumption that our family members are our next of kin. So I talked to a friend recently in Illinois and they said, I don't know what you're talking about. And I said, well, for good reason, because Illinois doesn't have that law. Wisconsin is only about 1 of 7 states with a law like this. So the majority of the states are a lot more loose in kind of who can make decisions on their behalf. So if you're talking with family or friends out of state and they are like, what are you talking about? It might be they live in a state where they do have next of kin decision making. So I just want to throw that out there, that states aren't always kind of an apples to apples comparison. It can really differ where you live. Okay, so next we're going to talk about how do you actually do advanced care planning. So Parini talked a lot about why is it important, and hopefully we have your buy-in a little bit that if you haven't done a document, you might be interested in doing one. So there's kind of 4 basic steps, and we're going to walk through those today. The first one's going to be choosing a decision maker. That's called your healthcare agent. The second one is thinking about what matters most to you in your life and for your care. The third one is thinking about if you have any maybe cultural or spiritual beliefs that would impact your treatment decisions or the type of care you want to receive. And then finally, the 4th step is you've done all those other steps, you're ready to put pen to paper and get that healthcare power of attorney for the document done. So we'll walk through these step by step, and like I said, when you leave today, take a folder. It'll have this PowerPoint in it as well, and it'll give you more time to think about some of these. So kind of that first step is really important. It's thinking about, so if you couldn't make your own healthcare decisions, who would you trust to make them? So you want to be able to choose someone who you can trust. They need to be an adult, so age 18 or older, and they have to be willing to accept the role. So this is kind of comical, but once I worked with someone and I said, you can choose anybody you want to be your healthcare agent, and they said, I love Bon Jovi, the singer. I absolutely want Bon Jovi. If I'm ill, he will come and visit and he'll cheer me up. And I said, and I was like, well, is Bon Jovi a relative? Do you know them? And he said, no, I don't know them, but I really, he's an inspiration to me. And I think that's great, right? Like we all have inspirations, but you want someone who knows you personally. That if I, as your social worker, pick up the phone and call that person and I say, Joe Smith's in the hospital, they're going to say, oh, I know Joe. I knew I was his healthcare agent, so choose someone that you know. And if that person is Bon Jovi, I'd love to meet them as well.
You're related to Bon Jovi, right?
Yeah. Make sure you choose someone who's going to be available via phone. So they don't have to live in Madison if you live in the Madison area. They don't have to live in Wisconsin or the U.S. But can they be contacted where if you have a health emergency, the medical team is able to get a hold of them? If they speak a language other than English, that's okay. The hospital has interpreters we can use to reach out. We would just want to make sure we know what language they use on your form so that we can call with an interpreter. A really big thing is someone who's willing to talk with you about your goals, values, and preferences. So Parini and I often meet with people in clinic and they're thinking about who they want as their healthcare agent. And sometimes we have spouses who don't pick each other. And I think people would think that would be uncommon, but it's not always. Sometimes people say, I love my husband, but he can't talk about stuff like this. He gets nervous, he doesn't want to have tough conversations, he doesn't like anything medical, he's kind of squeamish. And so that probably isn't the right person to be your healthcare agent if they can't talk with you about these what-if scenarios or what you'd want for your care. Similarly, you want to make sure you're going to pick someone who's going to follow your wishes and not think that they know better about what you would want. Because the goal of a healthcare agent is to really be your voice when you can't speak, right? And so to represent you at the table. So sometimes we have other times people say, I'm not picking my oldest son. He thinks he knows better than me. I wouldn't want life-prolonging treatment, but he would want it for me. And I don't think he'd listen to my wishes. And I would say, you're right. That sounds like your son loves you a lot, but he's not the right healthcare agent for you. And then finally, someone who can make decisions in difficult moments. So if you're thinking about kind of who is that person for you, kind of think about, have you gone through tough times before? Have there been other family emergencies or emergencies in your life? And maybe there's someone, kind of in your inner circle, people you love, that's just really solid in an emergency or crisis that if they get called, they'll pick up the phone and be able to help kind of navigate through next steps. Yeah. Great question. So the question is, if you already have a healthcare power of attorney, do you still need to do a living will? So the answer is not necessarily. Many people have a healthcare power of attorney and they don't have a living will. And I would say what's most important is for you and your healthcare agent, so the person you choose to make your decisions, to make sure you've had a conversation about if something ever happened to you, would your healthcare agent know what you would or wouldn't want? Because a living will really kind of outlines if I was at end of my life or in a persistent vegetative state, these are the things I would or wouldn't want. If you can have that conversation with your healthcare agent, you've kind of met that need. Otherwise, a power of attorney for healthcare can also include where you can write down some of your wishes, which we'll talk about in a bit, and that can also kind of bring in elements of a living will into power of attorney. If you're someone who's I really love to have everything on paper, I kind of like the prompts of things to think about and questions to answer, doing a living will is also a good idea. It's a free form, it's pretty fast and easy. So I know my answer wasn't really a clear yes or no, but it's really making sure that healthcare agent knows what you want. Good. Any other questions right now? Great question. So the question is, maybe you made your healthcare power of attorney or document or living will a long time ago. And if you want to make changes, can you just cross it out and write in the new changes? The answer is no. So once you do your document and it's signed and witnessed, that document is done. We'd call that a valid document. If you want to make changes, so maybe you want to change who you picked as your healthcare agent, or maybe you think, my healthcare has changed, kind of my needs or preferences have changed, you'd want to go ahead and make a new document, and that's certainly something that Parini and I can help with. Or if you've already done a document and you want to come in and review it with us for free, we're happy to do that too. I will say the one exception to your question is, maybe your healthcare agent has just moved. So you named your daughter, you still want your daughter, but she no longer lives in Wisconsin, she lives in Florida. You don't need to update your document with her new address information or telephone number. You can simply just add another page onto that and update their contact information, as long as you're not changing the people. Does that make sense? Okay, good question. Yeah. I think you have a smart mom. So the comment was, this person's mother knew that if they picked one of their children, they had one daughter who would disagree with kind of what her wishes were and was maybe worried about causing family conflict, right? Choosing one child over the other. Instead, they chose a different family member who they trusted and felt like would follow their wishes, to kind of help keep the family maybe less conflict and to make sure their wishes were followed. And I think that's a good idea sometimes. I know everybody loves their kids, and if you have 3, I know you love them all, but you don't want to name them all, right, as your first choice, which we'll talk about more.
Okay, so this is a nice segue to talk about what is the role of a healthcare agent. So again, that's the person that's going to make healthcare decisions for you if you were ever unable to make healthcare decisions. So sometimes people worry about, sometimes people say, I don't want to do a power of attorney because I don't want to lose control. I don't want to give up all my decision making to someone else. And I get that. And what I tell people is this is the way to make sure that you do have control over the decisions that are made. The only way anyone would ever take over healthcare decision making for you is if your power of attorney was what we call activated. The way we activate this is if 2 providers were to independently evaluate you and decide that you no longer have the ability to make healthcare decisions. Now, this could be temporary. Maybe it was a car accident and you are unable to make decisions for a few weeks, but you get better, you recover, and we deactivate that power of attorney. It could also be permanent, maybe in the case of an advanced dementia where you're not going to recover that ability to make decisions. And so someone is permanently going to make decisions for you. So it's kind of like a light switch. We can turn it on or we can turn it off, but it kind of lives in your medical record and we'd have no reason really to look at it unless something were to happen and we didn't think you could make decisions for yourself. And so like I talked about deactivating, say in that case of a car accident, you improve, you're better. It only takes one person to say you can make your own decisions again. And then what are the responsibilities? So say we have to turn that light switch, you're no longer able to make decisions, 2 providers have decided that. What kind of responsibilities are we going to give to that healthcare agent? So they're going to be able to make decisions about your healthcare. So tests, medicines, surgeries, and ideally, they're going to make those decisions based on what you would have wanted. Their job is to be your voice and speak on behalf of your wishes and your best interests. They're going to interpret instructions based on what they know of your preferences and values. They would have the authority to review, release medical records, and then help arrange for your medical care in Wisconsin or other states. This has nothing to do with finances. They won't be responsible for your bills. They wouldn't have access to your bank accounts. It is simply healthcare decision making. All right, so step 2 is really talking about your goals, values, preferences. Oh, sure. Yes, so the healthcare power of attorney has nothing to do with finances, but so often healthcare does impact your finances, and that is absolutely true. So, maybe you're going to need long-term care. Well, we need to know what your finances are in order to access long-term care. Or maybe you're hospitalized and someone needs to pay the bills, like Mary mentioned. So that's why we do recommend you complete that financial power of attorney. So not only does someone have authority over healthcare decision-making, someone would have the ability to manage your finances. They don't have to be the same person. A lot of people choose, maybe it's one adult child for healthcare, another for financial, or however you want to split it up. But you're absolutely right. They do often go hand in hand. So step 2 is really talking about what matters most to you, okay? And just some prompting things for you to think about is looking back in your life, what experiences have you had with serious illness and hospitalization? Maybe you have a personal story that happened to yourself, or maybe it was a loved one. You have your story of your mother and the decisions she was able to make. How has that impacted what you would want for yourself? Looking back, what went well? What didn't go well? There's probably one in each category. And we ask these questions because, one, storytelling is powerful. Thinking about all of that, how had that experience shaped you? What was that experience like for your loved one? It might really impact how you think about your care moving forward. If something like that were to happen to you, what would you want for yourself? We also want to talk about what gives your life meaning. So what activities in your life are of such importance to you that without them, you might change your mind about what your treatment preferences are. So this is where I said it's really a process. It's not a one-time event. What matters most to you today may change 20 years from now, 10 years from now, 50 years from now. So it's an ongoing conversation about what matters most to you. And sometimes we ask patients, what does living well mean to you? If you're having a good day, what does that good day look like for you? What do you need in your life to say this is a life worth living? Kind of think about all of that. It's individualized. What your answer is going to be different than yours. It's okay. We all have different beliefs and different values, and there is no right or wrong. It's a really personal thing. But it's just some kind of talking points for when you are going to talk to your healthcare agent about that. Think about these kind of bullet points here.
Yeah, so we talked a lot about this, like what gives your life meaning. What I'm going to touch on yet is this bottom one of, are there any cultural or spiritual beliefs that are really important to you? So what helps you face serious challenges? Are you a person who's a member of a faith community that you really get a lot of spiritual guidance, maybe from a faith leader or other people in your faith community that you'd want to talk with them before you fill out your form? Or are there any spiritual practices that you'd like to have if you were to receive care? Sometimes we work with people in the hospital, and at the end of their life, maybe they want to receive last rites from a priest if they're practicing Catholic. So thinking about, is there any cultural, spiritual beliefs that you want to incorporate in? In the video, there was a woman who said it would be really important to her if she was at the end of her life that members from her choir, kind of these women, would come around and sing with her. And that was something that was really important to her and powerful and probably gave her strength maybe in moments where she didn't have the strength herself. So are there other people or other beliefs in your life that we'd want to capture thinking about those cultural or spiritual elements? Yeah, so there was a comment of this woman was talking with her daughter about kind of what happens with her body after she dies. Does she want to be cremated or body donation? And her daughter was like, that's morbid. I don't want to talk about that, or it doesn't matter, you'll be dead. I can do whatever. And I think that so often the topic of death or dying is uncomfortable for a lot of people, right? But we know that it's a part of life, just like we celebrate when a baby's born and we welcome them into the world. We know at some point they're going to leave the world, and we need to prepare for how that's going to be as well. And so I think with your daughter saying, I'm not going to do that, you're dead, and you said she's out, I think lovingly that might be the right answer of you love her, but she's not the right person to make that decision for you. Now, in the healthcare power of attorney form, there is an optional section you can fill out about organ and body donation. And so it's on the very last page in the form. It has to do with organ and tissue donation. Now, this section is optional. You can fill it out. It's similar to if you go to the DMV and you maybe get a driver's license or a state ID, and they will add that kind of orange dot if you want to be an organ donor. This form is similar. So if you say you would like to be an organ donor or you'd like to donate specific organs and parts, what that's considered is first person authorization. So you are giving your legal okay ahead of time that if you were to die and there were organs or tissues that could be used to help someone else, that you want to do that. Now, by doing that on your driver's license, ID, or this form, no one can override that. So your daughter couldn't say, I disagree with my parent, we're doing this. Okay, so maybe she's changed her mind with a family member having a heart transplant. And so, yeah, but I think this is important too. If you feel really strongly about organ or tissue donation, either you want to be a donor or you don't want to be a donor, and you fill out the section or you do it at the DMV, letting your healthcare agent know your preferences is important too, so they're not surprised later on. Now, let's say you went to the DMV 10 years ago, and you said at that time, I want to be an organ and tissue donor, and you have that orange dot. And let's say tomorrow you fill out a new power of attorney, and for whatever reason you think differently. You're like, I don't want to be an organ and tissue donor, and you say no. It will go by whatever is your most recent choice. So if you say no on this, that kind of invalidates where you previously said yes. So just know that if there's a mismatch in your preferences, it's going to go by the most recent. Yes, that form is in the packet over there. It also has step-by-step directions with the packet on what does answering each question mean. And if you're wanting help filling this out or talking about it more, we do have a sign-up sheet where we're going to offer free 30-minute appointments to go over people's documents or make a document, and we can talk about that section too. That was a great comment. So the comment was, sometimes people say, I'm old, I can't donate anything, no one's gonna want my organs or tissues. And you had shared, you spoke with someone recently and the advice they gave you is correct. So what we encourage you to do is, regardless of your age or health condition, if you are interested in being a donor, I'd encourage you to go ahead and check the box that represents your wishes. That might be, I wish to donate any needed organ or part. Because maybe regardless of your age, maybe your skin or other tissue or cornea or cartilage, maybe that can help someone else. I used to be a social worker in a burn unit, and oftentimes people who've been burned, they can't grow their own tissue fast enough. So sometimes they do need tissue from other donors until their body regenerates their tissue. And sometimes your age with your tissue might not be as much of a factor as maybe someone who's 90 and their heart might not be able to donate, but maybe there are other things. So thanks for sharing that. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And my sympathies on your son. So they had shared that their son passed, and after he passed, organization reached out to her, maybe organ and tissue donation or procurement, and said unfortunately they couldn't use any of his organs, but they could use some of his bones to help someone else. So that's an example too, maybe regardless of age or kind of otherwise health condition, there might be something helpful. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you to your son for his gift for someone else. And the question was, if you want to be an organ donor and you die at the hospital and they want to go ahead and donate your organs, how does that really affect your family in kind of a waiting period or maybe making arrangements for like a funeral, viewing, or cremation? So I will say that a lot of people want to be donors, but there are often the ability to be a donor is pretty small. Typically you have to die in the hospital. Because they have to be able to move rather quickly to be able to keep those organs and tissues viable. I will say there is sometimes a delay, and maybe sometimes people need to be kept alive on life support at the hospital until the organ and tissue donation team has found like a match for maybe an organ or tissue. So sometimes that can be a few days. Organ and tissue donation does not impact someone's ability to have a funeral, their ability to be cremated, or like a viewing, like a wake. They can still do that, and they work with funeral homes. And so typically it might delay like a funeral process maybe by a few days, but they do work with the family on that as well, and wanting to kind of communicate those changes in that timeline. Well, the question is, if you want to be an organ donor, is it important to let your healthcare power of attorney agent know that you want to die in the hospital? I think that kind of depends. You know, we never really know what's going to happen to us, right? I think it's really about what matters most to you. So if you're somebody who really wants to be at home or on hospice and that's what's most important to you, you know, I would say, like, do what's most important to you. If the idea of donating and giving life to someone else through organ and tissue donation is really important to you, I'd encourage you to talk to your agent, and maybe that's something that they can weigh with your care team if that situation happens later on. Anything you'd add?
I would just say it's only certain types of deaths that can lead to organ donation. So you'd have to be already in an intensive care unit on life support. And so, like Mary kind of said earlier, it's not always something that we can control, but the best thing you can do is say, it's important to me. If the opportunity arises, I would be okay being on life support for a few days if that meant I could donate my organs.
Yeah. And choosing no is okay too.
Absolutely, choosing no is okay. You do not have to donate. Did you have a question or comment? Thank you for sharing that. Kind of saying in the hospital they're looking for major organs, so heart, lungs, kidney, and so with donating skin, there's not that set timeline, but with donating major organs, there is a timeline that your death has to occur in order for donation, in order for those organs to be viable. So that's going to happen in the hospital setting. So like in the instance of a car accident, perhaps if you die at the scene, maybe you can donate skins, but we're not able to keep your organs going in order to donate. Did I capture that accurately? Okay. So just saying that you have to be within a few hours, 2 to 3 hours, or 2 to 4 hours, in order to preserve the organs. Again, because they have to, in order to be viable for transplant, we have to preserve them to the best that we can. So yes, UW Health does have a transplant center. So they do. That's not an area that Mary and I work in, but yeah, I think it's a pretty robust transplant center. Yeah. So there's a couple of different pieces here. So one of the questions was, maybe you're in the hospital, you're just feeling lousy, and you prefer that someone else, maybe that the doctors call another family member to talk about what's going on with you. Does that power of attorney need to be formally activated in order for that communication to take place? Did I capture that question correctly? Okay. So no. So the answer is it does not have to be formally activated as long as we have your permission. So we can only release protected health information with your consent. So as long as you are able to make your own decisions, if you tell us, call my daughter-in-law, she's a nurse, I trust her, call her, we absolutely can do that even if your power of attorney for healthcare is not activated. Now, I will say, if there is a decision that needs to be made, if you are able to make your own decisions, we will go to you for the decision. Maybe you're trying to decide about a surgery. Maybe your daughter-in-law can help you decide if that surgery is the right choice for you, and then you would be the one to consent for it. So every healthcare system has a release of information. At UW Health, we have a verbal authorization for communication. So that can live in your chart and is active at all times. So if you want your daughter-in-law to be able to call up and say, my mother-in-law had an appointment yesterday, tell me what happened. Even though you're making your own decisions, if that release of information is on file, we have the permission and the authority to release protected health information to her. So that's another form that you might want to do, even though your power of attorney is sleeping or not looking at it, but you want to make sure someone can still access pertinent healthcare information. You might want to consider doing a release of information wherever you get your healthcare. That was a great question.
So for the sake of time, Parini just skipped through some of our slides that did the page-by-page explanation, which we also have in the folders. And if you come and see us and you want to do a document, we'll go through that with you. But we do want to touch on a couple of pages in the document. So this is the second to the last page, page 5. Now, if you've done a healthcare power of attorney, yours might look a little bit different. They all basically have the same kind of nuts and bolts. They're kind of the same major pieces, but they might be formatted a little bit differently. But this is what page 5 looks like of the basic state of Wisconsin document. Now, it's really important if you are going to take the time to do your healthcare power of attorney, you want it to be valid. And one of the ways to have a valid document is that you have to sign it physically in front of 2 witnesses. So for valid witnessing, people who can witness can be your neighbors or your friends if they're age 18 plus, maybe other people at the senior center. They can be healthcare social workers or chaplains. So Parini and I, for example, are witnesses. What I want to really pay attention is who can't witness. So if you're going to do your form and you're going to sign it in front of 2 people, your witnesses cannot be related to you. So that's like a son-in-law, it would be related to you via marriage. So they couldn't be a witness. So you can't use a family member. You can't use a person that you name as your healthcare agent. So if I'm filling out my form and I name my friend Parini as my healthcare agent, Parini can't be one of my witnesses. So I need someone else. And then the person has to be above age 18. And then finally, they can't be your healthcare doctor or a nurse. So the only people from a place you receive care from a healthcare staff that can witness are social workers or chaplains. So I always just let people know if you're going to do your document, which I encourage everyone over the age of 18 should do it, just make sure you pay extra attention at the end and make sure you get it appropriately witnessed. Any questions on who can and can't witness? Okay, the other thing that Parini and I often see is, right, you got your witnesses, they're appropriate, but someone puts the wrong date. So on this page, there are 3 spots for dates. All the dates need to match. So sometimes people write the wrong date, that can invalidate a document. So we don't want kind of a quick typo or a mistake to invalidate this really important document. So we always tell people, double check your document. Now, when we were here last year, we had some people come in and bring us documents they had previously done because they wanted us to check them. That day, I think we found 3 documents that were invalid because of this page. because it was witnessed inappropriately or the dates were wrong. So if you're somebody who has a document at home and you made it a long time ago and you're like, I just want another set of eyes on it, bring it in. We're happy to look at it. Mistakes happen, and we just want to make sure you have a document that meets your needs. And so we were able to help those people create a new document. Or if you're at home and you want to just take yours out, take a look at this kind of signature page and just kind of say, do all the dates match? And were my witnesses related to me? Were they my agent or a healthcare provider? Does that make sense? Okay, good. So what do you do when your document is done? So you've kind of gone through all these steps, you've thought about things, you got it witnessed, and now you have this document. So there's a few things that we'd recommend. One, we'd recommend that you keep your original document. Sometimes people keep it in a safety deposit box at the bank. I say that's okay as long as somebody knows that it's there at the bank and how to get into it. Ideally, you'd want your document to be accessible. But a big thing is we'd encourage you to give a copy to each of your healthcare agents, those people that you name as your decision makers if you can't make your own decisions. Another good place to give it is to any place you receive your health care. So if that's UW Health or SSM, Merit or the VA or someplace else, give them a copy of your document, because if you ever have a health crisis, they'll already have that document. Now, healthcare records today, they're online, and there is a way that many documents can get shared across systems. So when I worked in the ICU, I cared for a woman once who was up here from Florida, had a healthcare emergency, and I could see in her chart she saw a Florida doctor and she had this document there. So I could easily get it from that healthcare organization. I think just having it on file with a healthcare organization helps to make sure it's not lost either. So I'd encourage you to give copies. Another one is talk to your loved one about your document and your wishes. So really make sure that they know that you've chosen them as your healthcare agent, what your wishes are, and kind of let them know, maybe you've had a healthcare change or a scare, or maybe you're going in for surgery and you want to have someone for support or talk with them about that. That person might be a good healthcare agent to just say, hey, Pam, I want to just pull out my document and kind of review it with you again. I really appreciate you doing this role for me. Like I said, keep your original where it can be easily found. And then lastly, like Parini said, it's not kind of a one and done document. It can be, but we'd certainly encourage you to review it over time. So we kind of think about the 5 Ds. So maybe every decade, or when you get a new driver's license or state ID, pull it out and just say, does this still meet my wishes? Maybe there's been a death in your family or dispute. You had shared that your husband died. And so maybe, your husband can't be your agent anymore. So making sure that your document still has people on it that are your healthcare agents, and that can serve. 3 is divorce. Something we didn't mention is one thing in the state of Wisconsin that will invalidate your document is if you are married and you name your spouse as your healthcare agent and you later become divorced, the entire document becomes invalid. Now, judges in Wisconsin are very good at divorce hearings about stating that, but that's an emotional day for a lot of people, and that piece kind of doesn't always stick with them. We work with a lot of people who say, I still trust my former spouse, I still want them as my healthcare agent, and that's okay. You just have to make a new document after the divorce. And then maybe you have a new diagnosis, a change in your health condition, or maybe your wishes have changed and you want to kind of update that document to reflect that. That'd be a good time to take it out too. Like I said, you don't want to make changes to your original document. If you're changing your people or your wishes, you want to execute a new document. Lastly, this is Parini's and my contact information, which is also in the folders. Thank you for that reminder. So the question was, earlier you mentioned not having more than one agent. Thank you, and we skipped that slide. So one of the big important pieces, do you want to skip to that page? Is on the form, it's going to have places where you name your first choice for your agent and your second choice for your agent, which Parini is getting to, this page. So in this box, it has spots for your first choice, your second choice. If you want to name a third choice, you can. I would just put it at the bottom in number 3. Now, we really encourage you to put one person per designation. One first choice, one second choice, one third choice. Sometimes people say, I have 3 kids, I want them to all make decisions together, and that's where I say, I know you love your 3, but choose one. And why I say that is because if you list more than one person as your primary agent, those people all have to be contacted, they all have to make a decision together, and they have to make the same decision. And that can be really hard in a healthcare crisis, one, for time, Two, even, the most loving and close families sometimes have disagreements on what that decision might be. So I'd really encourage you to choose one per line. So if something happens to you and you're not your own decision maker, we'll go to the first person on the list. If that person is unavailable or unwilling, we'll go to the second person. Same thing, if the second person is unavailable or unwilling, we go to the third. Now that doesn't mean if you have 3 kids and you name them 1, 2, and 3, that they all can't be part of your care, included in family meetings. It really just is asking for you to designate kind of one decision maker so that if there is a decision needs to be made, that one person has that authority to make the decision on your behalf. One time, Parini and I worked with someone with 12 children. All 12 were equal decision makers. Those 12 kids were not a fan of each other. I think even if they were, it'd be hard. But imagine trying to call 12 people at the same time to give them critical healthcare information and have them make a really hard decision. And I really felt bad for that family because that's really hard to do. So that's an extreme example with 12, but even with 2 people, it's really difficult. And so that's why we recommend one per choice. Thank you for asking that. Thank you.
Thank you. Hope to see some of you next week.
Thank you so much.
So now you see why they were back with popular demand, right? Hey, Ed, yeah, give them a big hand because that's a lot of important information that they share. Very good stuff. There's a folder over there for